I know you must be shocked. Matthew, you're a Christian apologist, and you think that the famous atheist Richard Dawkins is wrong? Yes. Bold move, I know, but I think Richard Dawkins is wrong.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, he is just a person. I'm sure he's wrong about a lot of things. So, okay, what else is he wrong about there, Matty boy? Oh, God. Why do we have so many guys called Matthew? It's confusing. I think I'll give you a less common name. I'll call you John Generic Middle Nameson Smith. Or Matt for short, because I'll probably forget.
But I'm not talking specifically about his atheism.
Which is so obviously wrong. I mean, I believe in God, therefore he am big real. And anyone who doesn't agree with me is obviously being wrong on purpose for some reason. Just because I don't provide a shred of tangible proof for the things that I believe. I don't have to prove that I'm right, you have to prove that I'm wrong. Next they'll be expecting criminals to be innocent until proven guilty, or some wacky shit like that.
But about another shocking claim that I think also breaks down under scrutiny.
Oh, so both athebobism and something that he said. Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but I have yet to see the scrutiny for which it would be broken down by. So if this other likely atheism adjacent claim is as smashed to bits as you think it is, I'm going to have to guess that the amount of that smashing to bits is not very.
Here's what he says. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil and no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference.
Ah, so yeah, like I said, hardly broken down in my experience, because yeah, the universe, as it is, makes a whole lot of sense from the perspective that it is just there, and not much if there is some big guy who really hates it when you masturbate. I mean, I can't blame him. If you were omnipresent, there wouldn't be a moment where someone somewhere wasn't jacking the Kraken or dialing the rotary phone for vaginally equipped individuals, and by someone, I do mean fucking millions of the bastards. I mean, it's fine if it's someone you're attracted to, but hardly anyone in the universe is me.
If you've listened to any apologists for a long time...
Oh my god, you have no idea. I mean, it's like I go out of my way to find them or something, and they are always the dumbest versions of themselves possible. You would think my livelihood counted on having to interact with very silly religy boys all the goddamn time or something like that. Weird.
This quote should sound very familiar, because it's often quoted as a representation of the atheistic worldview.
Well, that's kind of a silly thing to do. I mean, I don't have any problem with what that says personally, but to say it specifically reflects atheism as an idea, and, well, calling anything the atheistic worldview, since atheism is only part of a worldview, and there are many with very different outlooks and conclusions. Meaning that there is a large number of atheists who think that previous is wrong while believing in all sorts of things that one would not normally associate with atheism, but is still fine whilst calling yourself such, like ghosts or magic or crystals being of any medical value whatsoever. So yeah.
This quote is useful because I think it accurately describes the kind of world that atheism predicts.
There's only one thing that atheism predicts, if that even is a thing to say that makes any sense. But still, atheism could only predict God not real. Other than that, the universe could be all sorts of stupid shit, with magic and souls and cosmic hoo-ha and what else have you. All things that people who don't think that there are gods could think is perfectly reasonable. I mean, it isn't, but that doesn't stop them and doesn't change that particular descriptor being true for them.
But does it accurately describe our world? A world of no design, no good and evil, no purpose.
By my reckoning, it sure as shit does. When you leave out humans and potentially certain animals, then the natural world contains no design, and the reasons for that are quite handily described in various sciences. Good and evil are just ideas that humans use to describe certain things as positive and or negative, but at absolute standards, I mean, they don't even exist in most religions in that sense, seeing as few religions are consistent on what is a good or a bad thing to do. And don't even get me started on purpose, because that's not my purpose. Mine is getting drunk, falling down, and crying. Not strictly in that order.
Is that the universe we observe? Thankfully, no.
Oh wow, so you must live in an entirely different one. That's kind of awesome. I mean, think about it. Not only is he demonstrating multiverse theory, but also the ability to communicate from one to another as well. This is a scientific breakthrough of the millennia. Of course, watch the YouTube apologists of Universe B, and it is B, this is A, shut up, be just as ridiculous as our lot. In fact, basically, everything but their slightly further ahead advancement is exactly the same. Only their god is actually real, but happens to be just as hidden as our non-existent one. It's kind of hard to tell the difference.
Our world looks nothing like that, and you have to ignore all of the evidence to say that it does.
All of the evidence? All of what evidence? And it better not be really silly, or evidence that doesn't exist, or evidence that does exist, but simply doesn't fit in with what you think it does, and actually fits in with previous statement even more. Because I ain't got time for that. I'm too busy purposing down some stairs.
Here's what I mean. First, we observe design.
No, we don't. I mean, I assume you mean in the natural world and, you know, universe at large. And yeah, no, we don't see design. That is to say, a thing that is made in a very definite manner, usually on purpose to do a particular thing. No, what we see is the results of systems. Complex systems, no doubt, that layer into and over each other to end up with some remarkable endpoints. But those endpoints are more the scattershot pattern of a shotgun blast from a liquored-up jackass than the delicate marksmanship of a top-tier, peak-of-their-game sniper. Because yeah, both destroyed the target, but one of them was literally aiming to, and the other didn't even know it was there, or that they were even holding a weapon.
Nowhere is this more clear than the fine-tuning of the universe.
Ugh, not this one again. Okay, fine. It's not like you guys ever say any new shit anyway. At least I am here to give it new and interesting, terrible jokes and dumbass commentary. They should be thanking me for keeping their ideas so very palatable.
Scientists have so far discovered over 100 parameters and constants that had to be just so in order for life to be possible anywhere in the universe.
Okay, but what exactly does that mean? Like, sure, life as we have discovered it thus far, but I'm sure there are other ways life could be in a universe with some very different parameters and various quote-unquote physical rules and what have you. You could create what we would recognize as life, but while being very built differently. But even so, in some sense, if it wasn't like that, you wouldn't be here to make that argument. As much as you can say the universe is fine-tuned for life, life is also fine-tuned for the universe we happen to inhabit. But let's take it a step further. Sure, argue that yes, the universe had to be the way it is in order for any kind of life to form ever. Alright, all that proves is that is how this version of the universe is. It doesn't show that's on purpose. It doesn't show anyone meant life to happen, only that it did. Lots of things happen without anyone wanting them to. I mean, why do you think my parents had me?
And that's just the way the universe actually is. The agnostic physicist Paul Davies said, "The fact that these relations are necessary for our existence is one of the most fascinating discoveries of modern science."
And then he said, "Therefore God, am I right, fellas?" with air horns blasting all around him. And I mean, to be fair, that's still in a bunch of ranges, for most of them at least. When you say fine-tuned, I think it all has to be crazy specific. But actually, the universe could be very different to what we observe now, and still be perfectly suitable. And of course, as many things in science, there could be some fundamental part of our understanding that we are missing that blows the idea of fine-tuned anything to bits.
One example of fine-tuning is the gravitational constant. This is the number that determines the force of gravity. If this number were to change by 1 part in 10 to the 60th power, life would be impossible.
It's funny because I looked that up and I kept running into a particular phrase, and it was life as we know it. And that's a really, really, really important distinction. Life is all life anywhere always. Life as we know it is the things that we have seen and understood around us, but in no way precludes other kinds of life cropping up in ways we hadn't even imagined yet. You see, that is why it is so important to add that part to it. And the only reasons you wouldn't do that is either you don't understand that's what it means, and when they use it, they're doing it on purpose, or you do and you left it out to make your argument sound stronger than it is. So, ignorant or liar? Please pick one now.
That's a 1 with 60 zeros after it. That's a number that's so incomprehensibly big that I can't even begin to wrap my mind around it.
I can, because you put it on the screen, and yep, mind wrapped around it in a very literal way. And talking of literal ways, you change basically anything and life as we know it doesn't exist. Even if it's super similar to what we see now, it's still not the same. Not the same people or animals with the same experiences or the same exact biological contents. Change anything, then things change. Go figure.
But here's an analogy from Dr. Robin Collins that might be helpful. Imagine a ruler that's stretched across the entire universe in 1-inch increments. Billions upon billions upon billions of inches.
Hey. Stop talking about the length of my penis. No. I'm not bragging. You don't understand. I'm not talking about the one attached to my body. I'm talking about my pet phallus, Gregory. He's a big boy, but he is also very shy. Oh, look at that. You scared him off.
And the gravitational constant is set at just 1 of those inches. And if you move it 1 inch relative to the size of the entire universe, life could not exist.
Again, as we know it. But even if that were not the case, I don't think that proves a god boy so much as kind of the opposite. I mean, wouldn't it be more likely, especially with the speeds and feats of Le God, that the universe make no sense, that the way the universe is put together just should not support life? And yet it does, because God wills that life can do. So it doesn't actually matter if it's set up right, because, you know, all powerful. Why does he care about fine-tuning shit?
That's an unbelievably precise calculation. If it was bigger by that increment, the universe would have expanded too rapidly and stars never would have been able to form. Or if it was smaller by that increment, the universe would have just collapsed back in on itself.
Kind of proving my point there. And okay, assuming that's accurate, wow, big number big and small change small, is still not an argument for any kind of God. Like, even if it had to be that way, and it had to be made that way on purpose, that wouldn't make the thing or person or entity or whatever magic or beyond our understanding, or that whatever it was gives a single shit about human affairs.
That's just one example of over 100 that had to be exactly right.
Even that kind of precision isn't actually exact. I mean, you gave us a scale that lets me say, well, what if it changed half an inch? Could it do that? And what's the difference at that scale? Because as much as something seems mind-bogglingly big, there can always be way more precision. I mean, that inch contains fractions, and those fractions contain measurements that go thousands of times smaller at the very least. So what if the constant can be all those points different? And that's also assuming that the gravitational constant can be different enough to force life not to do. And no, having it be impossible to change would only donate that it is impossible to change, not God did it though.
We did not get that lucky.
As with all insanely huge statistical improbabilities, they become meaningless when you actually get the result. The exact configuration of sand on any given beach is probably an astronomically high number. That doesn't change the fact that that's where those specific grains of sand are at that specific moment. It's not luck, it's just the thing that happened, no matter how unlikely.
So fine-tuning is powerful evidence that the universe we observe has been intentionally designed by someone who cares about our existence.
But even if the universe was designed, I mean, it wasn't, but even if we give you that, to say that means that someone cares about you is jumping the shark post so far you'll land where you fucking started. I could design a school for ants, but that wouldn't mean I give a shit about any of its students, does it? I mean, obviously I would care way more than if it was a school for humans, but still.
Second, we observe good and evil.
No, we observe things that we label as good and evil. That doesn't mean that the universe agrees with our assessment, or more importantly, cares. And the amount of things that people don't even agree on as good or evil, or whatever level from one person to another, proves that no one can quantify either in an objective manner. It's all based on what we like and what we don't like, and what hurts people and what makes people happy. And that in many cases changes from person to person. Not to mention that people's priorities when it comes to what they judge things as can vary wildly too. Some people really care about porn and think that it's super evil and will literally destroy the world, while others correctly want to see me naked. And on that front, they are both technically correct.
When I meet an atheist or someone who doesn't believe in God, I often ask them, do you believe that anything is objectively wrong?
No, but there are things that do harm, and thus are things that we shouldn't do to other people, and we should attempt to prevent those who would do it from doing it. Oh, look at that. I can have a moral framework that still allows me to get shit done without having to bow down to some unassailable standard that can't even be fucking found. And thus, I don't have to argue whether or not it's objective. In fact, I think my way of doing it has more value, since there's certain things we can agree that do harm, while most books TM don't even fucking mention them, or support them. Cough, slavery, cough, cough.
By objective or universal, I mean that this action would be wrong no matter who does it, no matter what culture they're in, no matter what time period, and no matter what they believe.
That's a really bad idea for your lot, because there's so much shit in your book, TM, that many would call objectively evil, and your boy seems to endorse. So even if there is objective good, bad, registered copyright at the beginning of time, then for some reason it's not reflected by your guy. Oops.
People often start by resisting this until we get to specifics. Is theft absolutely wrong? Well, what if you're starving? Is murder absolutely wrong? Well, what if there's no justice system in this country? Is racism? Is rape absolutely wrong?
Oof. That's where your worldview, that is likely based entirely on book, falls to bits. I can say they aren't objectively wrong and still demand that they be prosecuted because what they do hurts people. You can't do that because God doesn't fucking care. All you can do is appropriate secular values and pretend that you had them all along. I mean, books say God am all good, so of course he doesn't like bad thing that they didn't care about 2,000 plus years ago, so never thought to bother bringing it up for some reason. Again, it's a big oops.
The more specific we get, the harder it is to defend the idea that these things aren't absolutely universally wrong, no matter what the culture says. The conclusion for any rational person is inescapable. Right and wrong exist, and it's not defined by us.
It's also interesting that you had to stick to humans there, isn't it? Because that's exactly what those ideas are. Human invention. And there's a number of scenarios where a creature with entirely different physiology and psychology would not even be able to comprehend how those things could be wrong, but are simultaneously disgusted by the fact that we eat in public, and yet don't crap in open-air communal shit pits, hand in hand with our neighbours, like a bunch of fucking savages.
C.S. Lewis realized this when he was an atheist. He said, "My argument against God was that the universe seemed so cruel and unjust. But how had I got this idea of just and unjust? A man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line. Consequently, atheism turns out to be too simple."
Atheism is simple because it does not strive to explain the things it does not attempt to explain. C.S. Lewis was a smart man, allegedly, but his takes on atheism show a man of unfathomable ignorance. And that's coming from me, Captain Dumbass.
So it was the realization that evil truly exists that, at least in large part, helped Lewis to accept the reality that there needed to be a divine source for morality.
And again, even if morality was objective, that seriously doesn't have any explanatory power as to where that came from. It could be a box that says morals on it, that just fires morality beams all over the place. You cannot just insert God every time that you think that you have a point. You actually have to demonstrate it.
And similarly, when most of us look at murder and genocide, we know that these are truly evil. At most, in an atheistic universe, we're left with preferences.
What exactly is wrong with preferences, especially if those preferences are largely universal? They seem to achieve the same goals, don't they?
Where do we get this category of universal evil that transcends cultures and boundaries, if not from God? So the good and evil that we observe is powerful evidence for God.
No, it really isn't. And even if it was, it's as much evidence for my Lord and Saviour atheismo as it is for any other god you could name. That is to say, because it fucking ain't.
Third, we know that our lives have a purpose.
No.
We can't really live pretending like our lives are meaningless.
Meaning and purpose are not the same thing. And again, they are human constructs. They are things that humans invented and then applied to themselves and decided was important. And that's not a bad thing. There are far worse reasons to do all sorts of things. But you do not need a galactic tyrant to tell you what you have to do and who you get to fuck in order to have a life that brings you meaning and a life you feel is filled with purpose. You just give it to yourself. But of course, we all know how much God hates it when we give ourselves one.
Wait, before you go, I have something super important to tell you. It's life or death. It will change everything forever. Nope, wait, it's gone. Oh well, probably wasn't important. But while I have you, don't forget to comment, subscribe and notify. And if you want more of my smexy voice, check out Mrs. Six's channel Spoonstaff Stories, where I narrate and voice all the videos, and she does the work. And if you want to support the channel, check out the merch store for cool t-shirts, or check out Patreon, memberships and PayPal to support directly. Finally, follow me on the medias of social to get completely pointless guff and to keep up on the latest releases. Oh, I just remembered what I was going to tell you. Whatever you do, don't touch the